Within the last few minutes, it's been confirmed that an 11-year-old boy has died after being shot in a Liverpool car park.
A young boy on a BMX pulled up, stopped, took aim and fired 3 shots.
His eyes were wide open. There was blood pouring from his mouth. I knew he'd gone.
A murder that shocked the nation and stunned a city. Open warfare between armed teenage gangs that took the life of an innocent child.
When you're a kid, there are dangers out there, you know, getting shot shouldn't be one of them.
The young gunman thought he was above the law, but could his victim's mum and dad unite a community and help the police break a wall of silence?
And if their parents had any thought about our pain and what we've lost, they'd turn in their son.
We needed to catch the killer. We needed to catch the killer for the family and for the community.
It looks like any other suburb, leafy, green and friendly. But in August 2007, this pub car park was the scene for yet another fatal battle between Liverpool's feuding gangs. The victim, not a gangster, but an innocent 11-year-old boy, Rhys Jones. Tonight, we hear from his parents for the first time since the conviction of his murderer.
He was still my little boy. He was always giving us hugs and cuddles, wasn't he? And he still liked me to tuck him up in bed of a night.
Bit of a mummy's boy at heart.
Yeah, he wouldn't tell his friends that, but yeah.
George, is she all right?
A football mad.
Yeah, he was absolutely...
Obsessive.
Yeah, you know, every new kit he'd want it, he'd just want to go out and buy it, and he'd wear it till it fell off him. I know a lot of his friends he'd be the first person he'd knock for to go out and do anything, because they knew if Rhys was out, all the others would come out and, you know, have a game of football, have a game of hide and seek or whatever in the close.
Early evening on August the 22nd, 2007, Rhys Jones was late for football practice.
Come on! Mom! Come on! Hurry!
I put him in the car and I took them half the way up the road, because it's not very far. Stop. And he got out the car and he just kissed me on the cheek and said, "See you, Mum, I'll be home to watch England." Okay. That was the last thing he said.
We decided to have a penalty competition at the end, just as a bit of fun. When it was my turn, I took the last penalty for my team, and Rhys was on the other team, and he said, "I'll go in goal, I want to go in goal," so he went in goal for my penalty. When I did score, all the kids jumping on me, and we were laughing and joking, and Rhys started throwing mud, messing about, you know, and it was real good session.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay, because you don't...
After practice, Rhys started the short journey home.
Okay, that's okay, guys.
I asked him where he was going, and he said, "I'm going home." I said, "Well, yeah, I'll jump in the car, I'll run you down." But, you know, he only lives down the road, and he was perfectly safe. He's done that walk many a time. There was nothing untoward, there was lots of people milling about.
Just as Rhys crossed a pub car park, a youth dressed only in black pulled up and opened fire at a group of teenagers. The first shot missed everyone. The second hit Rhys in the neck. Even though an innocent boy lays stricken on the ground, the gunman fired a third shot.
As soon as I got there, you know, poor Rhys was lying there, and what I can only describe as a big puddle of blood just around his head, you know. It was very evident to me that, and I've said it before, if it could have magicked a paramedic there wouldn't have been nothing anyone could do for him.
As Rhys's killer made his escape, his mother was called to the scene.
When you got there, nothing could have prepared me for what happened, what was there. The hundreds of people and the police, and it was just horrendous. I just jumped out the car. There was all people in a circle, and as I just got through the circle, Rhys was just on the floor. And he was just lying there in a pool of blood, his eyes wide open. I knew he'd gone. But I just got hold of him and I was just saying to him, just stay with me. You'll be okay. But it wasn't.
So you were with him and he was still alive, was he?
The paramedic said to me he was still alive. But I don't know, he was trying to resuscitate and he was doing his heart. But I knew looking at him, his eyes were wide open. There was blood pouring from his mouth. He was just lying there in a pool of blood. I knew he'd gone. Although I was holding him and shaking him and telling him to wake up and it'll be all right. And it seemed forever for the ambulance to arrive.
Stephen arrived at the car park just as the ambulance was leaving for hospital.
I parked up and got out and I just saw the blood on the floor. And I heard them saying, you know, the ambulance has taken them to the hospital.
But you were in total panic and shock, I'd imagine.
Melanie had said, obviously, he'd been shot. At that time, I really didn't understand how serious it was. You know, until I got to the hospital and I walked into the trauma room. Melanie was in a little side room. And she just came out saying, they can't resuscitate him, they can't resuscitate him.
At 8:46 that evening, Rhys was pronounced dead.
Did you have a chance to say goodbye to him?
As they were working on him, they allowed us to be there, and they were saying to us, you know, talk to him, and we were talking to him, and they took his socks and his football boots off, and I was rubbing his feet, and they were saying, you know, keep talking to him, although they were actually working on him at the same time. And then it got to the final thing, but if this doesn't work, there's nothing else we can do, and his heart just wouldn't beat on its own with it, and he'd lost a tremendous amount of blood, and his little body just couldn't take any more. It was just, as much as I was praying.
An 11-year-old boy is shot dead in Liverpool. Playing on the streets of Croxteth, he's believed to have been killed by a teenager riding past on a bike. Tonight, another young victim of guns on Britain's streets.
Within hours, Rhys's murder made the headlines.
Now, as you can imagine, there was absolute shock here this evening. A number of people from the pub rushed over to try and help the boy. He was alive when they got there, but it has since been confirmed that he died shortly afterwards.
As the media rushed to the scene, Stephen and Melanie arrived home from hospital.
It was terrible. We went up to his room, didn't we? And it was just horrendous, and you just can't envisage that he's not going to be there anymore. And I just wanted to shut us all away, didn't I? I didn't want anybody to come in the house. I didn't want... When I say anybody, I don't mean family and friends. I mean towards, like, strangers, you know, like the police and the press. And I just wanted us just to be there and to deal with it.
From the start, the police knew this would be a difficult case to crack.
Yes, I felt pressure. Of course I did. I'm a human being. I'm a professional, and I've got to remain professional at all times. Because what was important right from the offset is that we needed to catch the killer. We needed to catch the killer for the family and for the community. It was obvious the upset that they were going through, and at one stage during That meeting, Mel took hold of my hand, looked into my eyes, and then I knew the enormity of the task. I mean, their world had been shattered.
He looked at me straight in the eyes and he told me he would find the person who'd murdered Rhys. I never doubted for 1 minute that the police wouldn't find him. I had every confidence in them.
Stephen and Melanie had confidence in the police, but they had little knowledge of the dangerous armed gangs that ruled some of the streets of Liverpool. No experience of the ruthlessly enforced wall of silence that surrounded many major crimes. And no idea that they would be forced to go public with their grief and challenge those who could help solve this crime to come forward and reveal the truth.
And if their parents had any thought about our pain and what we've lost, they'd turn in their son.
11-year-old Rhys Jones was the innocent victim of Liverpool's problem with gun crime. He was killed in a pub car park in broad daylight. It was a very public murder. Before long, the streets near Rhys's home were rife with rumours that the gunman was a notorious 16-year-old boy and member of a gang. But bringing the killer to court would be far from easy. Although well known to the police, he was adept at avoiding detection, and fear of retribution meant local people were reluctant to come forward.
We knew there was a name being bantered about. We told all our friends and family not to tell us. Until that person was actually charged with Rhys's murder, I didn't want to know who he was.
The police had CCTV footage of Rhys's murderer cycling around the area. But the image was not clear enough to identify the killer. Pressure was mounting, though, for quick results.
Have you got the killer on CCTV?
Yes, there is CCTV footage that shows the killer travelling to the scene on the bike and travelling in the general direction of this car park.
If you've got that footage, why hasn't there been any charges yet?
What we're looking to do with the footage is to do work around that and enhance...
The vague CCTV images weren't the only problem. The crime scene provided few clues.
The biggest challenge from the outset was probably a lack of forensic opportunities at the scene. We didn't recover any bullets. There were obviously no fingerprints of any note. The CCTV footage we had wasn't of the best quality, so that in itself sets a challenge.
No forensic evidence and no clear picture of the killer, but the police were getting plenty of tip-offs.
Well, this area here, it's a very tight-knit community, and right from the very beginning, we were given the same name. It came into us time after time after time.
And this is the boy whose name was on everybody's lips and who would remain the focus of the police investigation. Sean Mercer was a member of a local gang called the Crocky Crew, and he was familiar to the police. He had been stopped and searched 80 times. He also had an antisocial behaviour order.
Sean Mercer was a son of Croxteth, and he had a fanatical patriotism towards Croxteth. He was on the cusp of going from the youth wing of the Croxteth Crew into the older gang. Now, that's significant because once you get into the older gang, you can start making money. You can start grafting with them, which was the term they use for drug dealing and going out to do robberies and going out to tax rival drug dealers.
Merseyside police are holding a 16-year-old boy on suspicion of murder tonight in connection with the shooting of 11-year-old Rhys Jones.
Just 3 days after Rhys Jones was shot, Sean Mercer was arrested and questioned. Not that he was prepared to do any talking. He would only tell the police that he was with his friend and fellow gang member Dean Kelly on the night of the shooting.
What you find with Sean Mercer and gang members like him is that they've got no fear of the police. They've been in and out of police stations from a very young age, often from the age of 12, 13, and so they know the system, and they know that they can play the system to their advantage, and they know the rights. And that, coupled with the fact that they can get the mates to back them up with alibis, makes it very difficult for the police to investigate them.
No surprise then that Dean Kelly vouched for Mercer's whereabouts, but the police had a lead. They now focused on the background to the shooting. Croxteth Park, where Rhys lived, was a pleasant Liverpool suburb 5 miles from the city centre. but it was close to Croxteth and Norris Green, where two gangs were involved in a running violent battle. Even though it was on their doorstep, for Stephen and Melanie, this was a world away.
We've lived there 17 years and we've been very happy there.
You never feared for yourselves
No.
or your children living where you lived?
Never.
So you weren't aware of the gang and drug culture that existed just half a mile or so away from you?
We were aware that there was a dispute between gangs in Norris Green and Croxteth, but that's not where we live. We don't live in them areas, so it didn't seem to affect us, did it?
Mercer's gang, the Crocky Crew, and the Strand gang from Norris Green had been fighting since 2004.
Liam Smigger Smith was just 19, the self-styled leader of the Strand gang, who liked to star in his own YouTube videos.
The hostility had peaked almost a year to the day that Rhys was shot, when Liam Smith, a leading member of the Strand gang, had been gunned down.
Smith was visiting a friend in Old Course Prison when he got into an argument with another inmate, Ryan Lloyd from the rival Croxteth Crew. Half an hour later, the teenager was killed in the prison car park.
On the evening of Rhys's murder, members of the Strand gang were at the Fir Tree pub, in gang law and extreme provocation, because this was Crocky Crew territory. The poisonous atmosphere wasn't helped by the appearance of a young gang member called Wayne Brady. He had become a hate figure to the Crocky Crew by going out with a girl from Croxteth, a beauty queen called Vicky Smart.
The relationship between Vicky Smart and Wayne Brady was a very dangerous romance, and both sides of the divide wouldn't have been happy with this. And it's no surprise that her house was shot up, she was threatened and intimidated, and in the end had to leave the area.
Although Brady and Smart had since split up, they were chatting near the Fir Tree pub on the night of Rhys's murder.
The fact that Wayne Brady had come on to the Croxteth Crew's turf would have been seen as an affront to their honour, and it would have been their job to either get him out of Croxteth as quickly as possible, or shoot at him, either kill him or injure him.
When the gunman turned up at the pub, Brady and his ex-girlfriend were out of sight, but his two mates and fellow members of the Strand gang were in the line of fire. In theory, the picture was complete. The police had a prime suspect and a motive, but in practice, they had little hard evidence they could present in court. So detectives now turned to techniques straight out of a James Bond film. A secret listening device was hidden in the home of Mercer's best friend, James Yates.
James Yates lives very close to this scene here, and we know that he assisted him in some way. So right at the early stage of the investigation, we put a bug in his home address, and that paid dividends very early on in that we were able to establish some of the key movements of the individuals involved.
For now, the police were only scratching the surface of the gang. So high-tech wizardry also had to be matched with good old-fashioned legwork. Dozens of witnesses were tracked down and interviewed, but here the police were confronted with a disturbing wall of silence.
Despite several tip-offs, it seems many are reluctant to reveal their identities or to sign statements. Detectives say they can protect those who come forward, but not everyone here believes that. This area has seen too many shootings, and with the killer still loose, people are frightened.
Without the help of the local community, there would be no justice for Rhys. Frequent appeals by detectives were falling on deaf ears.
I need more help in the solving of this crime. The answers to who is responsible is within the community.
The best hope was for Stephen and Melanie to shame the local community into cooperating with the investigation. The grieving parents had little choice but to share their loss with the media.
We're devastated. We've lost our world. The world's lost a good guy.
My baby was only 11. He didn't deserve this.
The only reason we're here today, the only reason is because we need help. We need witnesses to come forward. We need the person
who killed our son to be caught and brought to justice. And if their parents had any thought about our pain and what we've lost, they'd turn in their son. Or their sister or their auntie or someone must know who it is, or they must suspect who it is.
What we want to do is to appeal to that individual. We knew that individual was a young person. He obviously wasn't intending to kill Rhys Jones. The fact that he killed Rhys may have had some emotional effect on him, and it was important that we tried to appeal to those emotions to get him to give himself up.
Mel, you then made this very direct appeal on television to the parents. Why did you do that?
I just felt, how could any mother look at her own son, knowing what he's done? You know, if he won't hand him in, she should hand him in. You know, you've got to come to a point where you think, you know, it's gone too far now, you know. I just don't know how she could look at him.
Did you think they'd apprehend someone pretty quickly? Were those your early thoughts?
We would have thought that someone out there would have thought, well, you know, if they knew anything, you know, they would have come forward, or, you know, people who knew who'd done it would have come forward immediately and said, you know, that this is the person who's responsible for it.
But nobody gave themselves up. And despite the heartfelt appeal, Sean Mercer was getting help not only from his gang, but from his mother. Jeanette Mercer lied to the police about the bike he was riding on the night of Rhys's murder. So much for Stephen and Melanie's plea for help. But their campaign was drawing support from all over the city, including Rhys's beloved Everton.
We all here at Everton have families of our own, and we cannot comprehend what you're going through. We appeal to anyone with any information to please contact the police.
In an extraordinarily moving afternoon, Stephen and Melanie shared their grief with 40,000 fans at Goodison Park.
11-year-old Rhys Jones lost his life in a senseless act of violence which shocked the world. Rhys was a fanatical Evertonian and hoped one day to follow in the footsteps of his heroes by playing for the team he loved. We are joined here today by Rhys's mum and dad, Stephen and Melanie.
We did think about not coming, but we thought that Rhys wouldn't have wanted to miss the game, so, you know, we decided that, you know, we would come to that game. As traumatic and, you know, heartbreaking it would be, we decided that, you know, we needed to come.
First of all, I couldn't believe how strong the family were when I met them. And I had a chat with them. You know, I felt as if I was in tears for them, because you know, the words I said certainly couldn't comfort them in any way. How are you, Steve?
Hi, David, you all right?
Nobody wants to have their son taken away from them, and we don't want shootings. How you doing?
Yeah, not so bad.
He's getting through it, feeling any better?
Yeah, it's obviously been a tough time. Initially, when we came back to Goodison, you're looking for him, you're looking for his hand, hold his hand, because there's a lot of people around, you know, when the match finishes, and, you know, you'd be looking around, looking for somebody's hand to hold. You know, when you're a kid, there are dangers out there, you know, getting run over, you know, stuff like that, you know, getting shot shouldn't be one of them. And it's just totally wrong.
Despite Stephen and Melanie's best efforts to encourage witnesses to come forward, the lack of information from the local community continued to hamper the investigation. The police were desperate for a first-hand account of Sean Mercer's movements on the night Rhys was shot. They needed someone to betray their mates. But who?
It's very, very difficult to get people to give evidence. The witness knows he'll have to go on the run or onto a witness protection programme, probably for the rest of his life.
Teenage gangster Sean Mercer was the prime suspect for the murder of Rhys Jones. He'd already been arrested but was released due to a lack of evidence. The young thug was strutting around his home turf of Croxteth, seemingly untouchable. Unbeknown to Mercer, the police had infiltrated his gang by planting a bug in the home of his best friend, James Yates. The Bug revealed that immediately after the shooting, Mercer had gone to the house of a 15-year-old boy, known for legal reasons as Boy M. When questioned by police, Boy M provided crucial information.
Boy M said that within half an hour of the shooting, Mercer had gathered together associates and members of his gang and had put in train a systematic effort to dispose of evidence.
According to Boy M, Mercer had plotted the cover-up from his house.
Mate, I'm here. I need you down here now.
First, James Yates and Nathan Quinn came round. Then it was the oldest gang members, Melvin Coy and Gary Kays.
Various other members of his gang have come to assist him in getting rid of the bike, the gun and the clothing he was wearing at a particular time.
It was clear that Mercer assumed he was above the law. No one would ever dare reveal his movements in the aftermath of the murder. That was certainly true of his gang, but Mercer made the mistake of allowing himself to be seen by Boy M's mother.
Come on, come on!
What's going on?
From Boy M's house, the gang travelled to an industrial unit where Melvin Coy worked. Here, Mercer was washed with petrol to remove any residue from the gun. His clothes were then set on fire.
They're very forensically aware. They read court reports. They talk to the older gangsters on the estate about how to beat police forensics. So, for instance, when they've discharged a firearm, they know that they've got to get rid of the traces of gunpowder on them, so they'll wash themselves down in petrol.
They might have been careful with the gunshot residue, but the police were still able to pinpoint the gang's movements. Now they knew what to look for. They tracked down CCTV footage of Melvin Coy's car en route to the industrial unit. And records from the gang's mobile phones proved they had been in the same area. The police were not there yet, but behind the scenes the case was slowly coming together.
Rhys was shot dead as he walked across a pub car park in Liverpool 6 months ago.
In public, though, detectives could not acknowledge their progress, and the pressure was growing to charge Mercer.
He's Liverpool's most wanted, his name common knowledge on Merseyside. Yet 6 months after Rhys Jones was shot dead, no one has been charged with his murder.
But as the weeks passed and there were no charges, was that very frustrating for you?
And I know it must have seemed to a lot of people that there was nothing going on and it was all very quiet, and there was a lot of people saying, you know, why isn't there been more arrest, or why isn't this person being charged? But to us, we knew a lot was going on, and we knew how delicate and fragile the whole case was.
The other thing with Dave is that he was obviously under a lot of pressure, not only from people above him, but the people in Liverpool wanted these people caught. But he'd always ask us if we were happy with what he was doing and where it was going, because at the end of the day, you know, he was saying that, you know, he's doing it for us. He's not doing it for anybody else. He's doing it for us, and if we're happy, then, you know, he'll continue doing what he's doing, and he'll go at his own pace, and he'll get it right, which is the most important thing.
Because the worst thing would have been, you know, if you'd arrested him too early, you know, the charges may not have stuck, or, you know, it might have got to court and they mightn't have been convicted. You know, it's a waiting game, isn't it? And, you know, you've got to get it right.
At last, the waiting game and Stephen and Melanie's battle to persuade the community to cooperate appeared to have paid off when detectives got a crucial tip-off about the murder weapon. The police made a series of raids across the area and found 2 guns in the loft of an associate of the gang, known now only as Boy X.
There are a number of key turning points, but I would say probably the main one was when we recovered the gun that was used to kill Rhys.
Boy X was brought in for questioning.
Boy X seemed to be very frightened by what was happening to him and by the predicament that he got himself into. He described how he had taken possession of a gun from Sean Mercer shortly after half an hour after the shooting.
A huge breakthrough for the police, a first-hand account of Mercer handling a gun on the night of Rhys Jones's murder. But to get Boy X to give evidence against Mercer, the police and the Crown Prosecution Service took the almost unprecedented step of granting him immunity from prosecution for handling firearms.
It's very, very difficult to get people who are known to the gang to give evidence against them because there's a fierce sense of loyalty, there's fear. The witness knows he'll have to go on the run onto a witness protection programme, probably for the rest of his life. And it's been drilled into him from an early age that he must not betray his mates.
As the net tightened around Mercer, Melanie tried to get back to normal life and return to work at the supermarket.
The first couple of shifts I'd done in work, because I work on the checkout, I think every customer in the shop wanted to come to my till. And a lot of the girls on the other tills were saying, come over to this till. And I think people just wanted to express, you know, how sorry they felt. And they were just queuing up to come to my till. And it was very emotional for me. And I got to get off my till quite a few times and go and compose myself and come back. And it was very difficult to go shopping, you know, if we wanted to go out the house and without people coming up to you and stopping you. And if nobody ever stopped us in the streets, if nobody ever sent a card through the post, you know, if nobody ever says, you know, what a lovely boy Rhys was, or I'm really sorry for your loss, or, you know, you'd think, what's up with people? What's going on? Doesn't anybody care?
Then, in April, came the news that Stephen and Melanie had been waiting for.
A 17-year-old youth has been charged with the murder of Rhys Jones on the 22nd of August 2007.
I would personally like to thank Stephen and Melanie Jones for their support and patience.
Dave came to us and he told us, Sean Mercer, it meant absolutely nothing to us. We thought, I don't know how I thought I was going to react, but it was just a name. It meant nothing to us. We don't know him. Never heard of him. Just meant nothing. And I think I was a bit surprised that it meant nothing because it was just a name.
Sean Mercer would now become much more than a name to Stephen and Melanie as they were confronted in court with the teenager accused of killing their son.
They were just slumped on the desk, and you know, they just weren't interested. They were just, it was just as if.
You think you were up for shoplifting?
I think it was just a big
not murder.
But Merseyside police had a problem. Boy M, who had told the police that Mercer had plotted the cover-up from his house, was not prepared to give evidence in court. The pressure was now on Boy M's mother. Would she tell the truth about her son and the gang in court?
I was aware from previous experience of murder trials that anything could happen.
Sean Mercer, a member of a Liverpool gang called the Crocky Crew, had been charged with murdering 11-year-old Rhys Jones. Alongside him in the dock were 6 other gang members accused of helping him with the cover-up. But it was far from an open and shut case. There was no forensic evidence incriminating Mercer, no witnesses to the shooting, and the alleged murder weapon would be challenged in court. The prosecution's case hinged on the bravery of local residents who were prepared to give evidence against a violent gang.
We didn't have an identifying witness, and so it became apparent that this was going to be a case where we were going to have to piece together as much evidence as we could gather to create a strong case, rather than just having one witness standing in a witness box saying, I saw Sean Mercer shoot Rhys Jones.
The loss of their son had devastated Rhys's parents, Stephen and Melanie. As the trial approached, they had to come to terms with facing the teenager accused of killing their son.
What about the first time you saw Sean Mercer?
I think He came in and sat down in front of us, didn't he? We thought he was just a bit of a kid, didn't we?
I was very surprised how young he looked.
Yeah, how young and how...
I just fell apart. I was just a total wreck. Just to think that he was just a few feet from where we were sitting, it was just horrendous.
What, how one child could do that to another child?
But he didn't even acknowledge us. He didn't even look, did he, over at us?
In court, Mercer and his gang showed they still thought they were above the law. Boy M, a key figure in the case who had told police about the cover-up, refused to take the stand. And Mercer's legal team raised significant doubts about the gun which the prosecution claimed was used to shoot Rhys. Mercer and his acolytes' behaviour added to the distress for Stephen and Melanie.
The behaviour of them 7 in the dock was totally disgusting, disrespectful and hateful. They just laughed, made jokes, chatted amongst themselves.
I kept on thinking that, you know, we're better than them. You'd hate to think that that was your son or your child sitting in that dock and behaving the way that they were.
The prosecution's case against Mercer and his gang was built around the testimony of witnesses from the local community. But the Crown Prosecution Service was anxious that face-to-face with the gang in court, witnesses might change their evidence.
The fact that you have a statement from a witness saying one thing did not mean that that witness was necessarily going to stand up in the witness box and say exactly what was in their statement. I was aware from previous experience of murder trials that anything could happen.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
The pressure was particularly acute for Boy M's mum. Her son refused to take the stand even though he had told police during questioning that Mercer had planned the cover-up from his house. But it appeared that Stephen and Melanie's campaign for the parents of anyone involved in the crime to do the right thing had worked. Boy M's mother stuck to her account, even though she was incriminating her own flesh and blood.
Come on, come on, come on!
What's going on? Whilst it put the mother's son in a position where he was helping the gunman, she was also trying to explain the reasons why, in her view, he had done that. So, to some extent, minimising his role in the events.
Come on!
Her evidence, coupled with that of Boy X, who told the court that Mercer had given him a gun after the shooting, was critical. The prosecution also highlighted Mercer's obsession with firearms. They showed the court these drawings. Mercer had made them whilst in police custody. It was a bizarre insight into his depraved mind. After 11 weeks in court, the jury was sent out to consider their verdicts.
A teenager has been found guilty of the murder of Rhys Jones. The 11-year-old was shot dead in Croxteth as he walked home from football practice.
Stephen Jones were in the public gallery to see 18-year-old Sean Mercer found guilty of murder. They've been so composed and so dignified throughout this 9-week trial, but they sobbed and embraced as the verdicts were read out.
All my focus was on Sean Mercer. Once I heard the guilty for him, I didn't even hear the other 6 verdicts, because I just completely broke down, didn't I?
I think he came across as thinking that he's untouchable, is that, you know, nothing's going to stick on me, it's all just, you know, made up by the police, and, you know, I'm gonna waltz out of here because they're not going to convict me, but, you know, they did.
Sean Mercer, stand up.
The judge gave Mercer the maximum punishment, life imprisonment with a minimum tariff of 22 years. In his sentencing remarks, he described Mercer as a coward who gloried in gang culture.
Take him down.
He was determined that night to kill somebody. And that just shows what a callous, cold-blooded murderer he is. You know, for us, you know, it's not long enough. But I understand, you know, he has been given the full sentence. And he will be middle-aged when he's, or if he's released in 22 years. But for me, life should mean life. He should spend the rest of his life in prison. Because you've got a life sentence on me.
Mercer lodged an appeal against his sentence. For their part of the cover-up, Gary Kays and Melvin Coy were sentenced to 7 years in jail. James Yates, who supplied Mercer with the gun, also got 7 years, but his sentence is under review. Dean Kelly received 4 years and Nathan Quinn 2. Boy M was given a supervision order, yet even after sentencing, the gang didn't show any remorse.
They whooped with delight as they were sent down. Such was their contempt for the legal process. Such was their contempt for Rhys's loved ones who were in court to see that process play out.
I just think they're inhuman. I just think they, you know, they must have seen us on the TV. They must have seen all the appeals and the hurt and the pain that we were going through. And they must be detached from their own emotions, because how anyone could see us go through that and not come forward, and then to actually cover up what was going on. You think, what kind of people are you? Are they so detached from this society that they don't care? They obviously don't care.
And after admitting to a charge of perverting the course of justice, Sean Mercer's mother was jailed for 3 years.
Do you think parenting is a large part of this?
Yeah, I do. You know, we've brought our, I mean, we're not saying we're perfect, because we're not, but we've brought our sons up the best way that we could. You know, we like to know where our sons were, you know, who they're with, what time they'd be coming home. We knew their friends, we knew what kind of friends they were, we knew their parents, but, you know, when you listen to the 7 that were convicted for Rhys's murder, when you listen to what kind of life on a day-to-day basis, you know, they get up at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they have a weed, they play video games, they have another weed, they have another, and that's all they do all day long, or they hang around the streets and terrorise people, and you think, what kind of life have they got? Why don't they want to do something else? Why don't they aspire to be someone?
While Rhys's parents now try to move on after the trial, the question of what if still plagues the last person to see their son alive. The sad truth is that if Rhys had accepted the offer of a lift home from his football coach that night, he would never have been shot.
I know loads of people have said to me, there's nothing you can do, you know, you couldn't have changed anything, and even Steve himself has said it to me, but I just can't help but think it, you know. If he would have got in it, if he would have got in the car, you know. Sorry about this. Doesn't get any easier, does it?
Well played, unlucky, sir. I don't know.
Time helps you sort of cope with it, but it's not the fact that Rhys has gone or what happened to Rhys.
Okay, see you tomorrow then. Well played, lads.
But to me, it's that vision of Rhys, the last thing I've seen of him. You know, that's sort of what haunts me, like.
Do you ever go through the what ifs? What if you'd gone to pick him up from football, or what if you know, there's so many what-ifs, aren't there?
I don't think we've gone through what-ifs because, you know, Rhys was doing what he should have been doing. You know, he was at football training, he was walking home. But the thing that really did upset us in the early days was, you know, he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. It was said a lot. And that used to upset us because we were thinking he wasn't in the wrong place. And it wasn't the wrong time. Rhys was where he should have been. It was Sean Mercer that shouldn't have been there.